I watched every neon horror movie, every one of them. That's 18 movies in total, including a couple that are kind of borderline horror. Now, if you remember, I did do this before with A24. I ranked all of the A24 horror movie catalog. Neon is something that has really impressed me lately. Obviously, everybody knows Longlegs. If you're a movie goer, if you're a movie enjoyer, you probably saw Longlegs. But after I saw that movie, it made me want to watch a lot more of the neon horror movie catalog because I've only seen a handful of them. And here we are. I watched them all. I think I'm going to tier list them just because it's a little bit easier. It's just easier because I don't want to rank them because I don't have a ranking, but I can tier list them. So that's what I'm going to do. This is in no particular order. It's kind of just the order that I watched them in, but most of them I did watch by like date of them coming out. So it's like kind of in order, but not really. It's a little sporadic. The first one we're talking about is The Bad Batch. This was an interesting movie for sure. It was an interesting time for me to watch it because it was right when I started Game of Thrones, because I watched House of the Dragon and it made me want to watch Game of Thrones. So I was already like seeing Jason Momoa, and then he was in this. He plays like a cannibal, like a super cannibal in this one. And he plays like an absolute savage in the other one. And then I thought about this and I'm like, I've never seen Jason Momoa in anything other than Aquaman. And like, this is the guy that we have playing Aquaman. It's kind of weird because he's like a savage and a cannibal in these other things. I don't know. I thought it was weird. But yeah, this movie was pretty interesting. You know, it follows this woman that goes into these like the Badlands, like lawless, chaotic country. Now, before I spoil the movie and talk about it, I will say this is a B tier movie. Definitely high up on the B tier, though. It was a pretty enjoyable ride, a pretty wild ride, pretty surreal. So if that's something you like, definitely watch it before you watch the rest of this section, because now I'm going to spoil it and talk about the actual movie. It's like really ridiculous. I mean, she gets picked up by cannibals in the first like 5 minutes of the movie. They saw her leg off and an arm off, gets away and has a robotic arm, and it like time skips. It's pretty weird, but it's pretty good, honestly. There's this really crazy trip scene in the middle of it that actually looks good. I guess it's like acid. You get to see like the stars moving in the sky, and it's not like overly dramatized. It's kind of just like a good trip, seemingly. Until she then meets up with Jason Momoa again, and then we get into the second act of the movie where he and her kind of like bond weirdly, and then the end of the movie is like my least favorite part of the movie. She like Stockholm syndromes into being with him, even though he's the ringleader of who chopped her arm and leg off. It was weird, but overall it was a pretty trippy movie, pretty surreal. There was like this one moment also where a bunch of pregnant ladies walked in with guns, and I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it. It was really surreal. I really did like this movie. The second movie I watched was Assassination Nation. This is a movie that I was kind of excited for because it was directed by Sam Levinson, who made Euphoria. So I was kind of expecting like a Euphoria, the movie type beat. And it wasn't really. It did have a bit of that like Gen Z high school drama, but instead of like doing it really like in a cinematic style with like some of the best scoring I've seen in anything ever, it was kind of just like trendy. I guess that's kind of my fault for watching it in 2025 instead of 2018, because in 2018 I was like 18 or 19, probably one of the target audiences for that, maybe like a couple years older. Before I spoil any of the movie, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a ranking. That ranking is D tier. I didn't really enjoy this movie. I really wanted more from this movie, mostly because it's Sam Levinson. I'm an enjoyer of Euphoria. I was kind of expecting a Euphoria the movie, like I said, and it didn't deliver on that. Also, the ending was really bad. I'll talk about that more later. Not great, D tier. The movie itself is like, I guess, kind of like a horror comedy, I think. So you can kind of like not, you know, take it so seriously. Yeah, it was kind of not very good. Also, the ending was just like very, very obviously inspired by Tarantino. as it ends in like a guns blazing, super action-packed finale, like a lot of Tarantino movies do. The ending pissed me off, just straight up pissed me off. Not just the Tarantino thing. The whole point of the movie was, I thought at first, was a whodunit. They would put all the people that possibly did the mass leaking. That's what the movie's about. It's like mass leaking people's nudes and emails and text messages and all that. Who did that? Who did that? I thought they were gonna make it like somebody that we see along the way, and they kind of put up a scapegoat at one point, but then at the end, they revealed that it was like the main character's brother, who had 0 lines in the entire movie, maybe 1 line. They revealed that it was him, and then they said, "Why did you do it?" And he said, "For the lols." It was just really lazy. It felt kind of like a Scream 3 kind of thing, where they just like throw a random person in and they leave clues the whole time and make you kind of think like, who did this? You know, you're trying to watch the movie the whole time and trying to figure out who did it. And then it's somebody that didn't matter at all. It felt like the whole movie that I just watched was kind of irrelevant at the end. The next movie on this list is Border, and this is honestly one of my favorite movies on this entire neon horror movie list. I had a really good time watching this movie. It is very weird and very graphic at some points, but it is a really good watch. If you like weird A24-esque movies, this is definitely one to check out before I spoil it all. But I will let you know, I'm putting this in A tier, so, you know, if you want to go watch a movie, watch this movie. The movie is about trolls, and not these kind of trolls, these kind of trolls. It's a really weird movie. It's one of those movies that you'll like watch and be like, wow, that was just strange. This movie was really weird. It was really weird. It kind of felt like Lamb. Yeah, it felt like Lamb to me. It felt like Lamb. The whole movie was really minimalistic. There was only like 2 characters that really matter. And then they join in a 3rd character and it kind of like drastically changes the dynamic of the movie, which I like a lot. And I think it's pretty impressive if you can like put only 2 characters in a movie and then I still think it's really good. You can do so much with so little. And I like this movie. The environment was good. It's one of the movies that kind of like toes the line into horror because it's not really a horror. It's not really even like a thriller. It's kind of like a mystery, and really the scary moments are like not even shown. It's like about human trafficking and like the true evils of what humans really are, and like how these trolls kind of like go against the grain of typical humanity. I was thinking at first like they were werewolves, and then when I found out they were trolls, I was like, okay, that makes more sense than werewolves. There's like some weird body horror moments and all that. And it's not really like body horror in the same sense as like some of the other body horror on this list, because there's like Cronenberg movies on this list that are like all about shocking body horror. So it's not in the same sense, but it is kind of in like a different sense, but in the same sense. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm just gonna move on, but A tier. She Dies Tomorrow. It was kind of boring overall, like a very boring movie, a slow burn movie that kind of just repeats itself into like a point where it kind of just turns into mush. And if that doesn't sound like a compliment, it's because it isn't really one. I liked this movie for a little while, but once it started to just become the same thing over and over, very predictable, the slow burn didn't really amount to much of a payoff. And for all those reasons, I mean, I'm gonna have to put this in C tier. It just wasn't very good. The movie itself is kind of interesting at first, but they do overuse Mozart music, the same song, over and over, which is kind of the first place where I'm like, wow, they're overusing assets in this movie. And yeah, they really were. I just think they use it into the ground. Now, the movie itself is like cool. It's about like a depressed person that says they're gonna die tomorrow, and then it kind of does like this smile thing. It's about like a depressed person that says she's gonna die tomorrow, and then everybody that hears that also thinks that, and it's kind of about like how like a bad mood, like a depressed person can kind of just infect an entire party of people. I think it's a cool movie in theory, but once it started to like do the I'm gonna die tomorrow depressed thing, and then it moved on to the next person, and then it moved on to the next person, and then it moved on to the next person, it kind of just like did the same thing like 5 or 6 times in the movie, and at some point it just started to turn to mush. Okay, well, I get it. Is there going to be something else that happens? And nothing else ever just happened. So, not great. This is a really interesting movie in theory. Once again, very, very interesting thought. Kind of slow burn. Definitely not as bad as like those other movies, but I'm still gonna put it in B tier. Now, I don't have a lot to say about this movie because not a lot happens. It's like about this group of like assassins that can like put their brain into another person and become somebody else, and then they go and do a murder-suicide. And so basically they make it so it looks like somebody else did it, and it's them. It's a really interesting movie, and there's a couple of like body horror moments, but it's really just when they're like transitioning into a different person. The part where they like transition into another human, it just feels kind of reminiscent of the same movie. When you look at Infinity Pool, look the exact same as Possessor. Kind of lame, kind of a letdown for that. It could have been a little different, but I guess it is what it is. You know, Brandon Cronenberg made both movies. It's one of those movies where it's kind of better after you watched the movie. Reflecting upon it feels kind of cool, you know? Because there's like 20 or 30 minutes in the movie at one point where she's just studying these people that she's going to become. A pretty mundane life. You don't really get a whole lot. It's more so just the fact that she's watching them and studying them. It's eerie. The Lodge. I watched this movie when it came out and thought it was pretty generic and kind of boring, and then I watched it last week and I also kind of thought it was a little generic and kind of boring. I'll get into more of the specifics here in a moment, but as far as the spoiler-free intro to the segment goes, yeah, it's pretty mid. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Nothing is super new into the genre, and yeah, it's a little expected. There's some twists and turns along the way. I do like the cast a lot. You know, the boy from It and the stepmom is in Zola and a handful of other things. Yeah, I like those characters a lot, or those people, and I just felt like the movie didn't do enough. Man, you know, the casting alone isn't enough to just carry this movie. I mean, it rarely is, but it definitely wasn't here. All right, into the spoilers section of this segment. They did tragedy in the opening scene really poorly, in my opinion. I think they did this whole mom kills herself thing way too early. I don't even think we got introduced to the kids first, and I might be wrong on that, but if I am wrong, it's not by much. I feel like I didn't have any form of attachment to these characters yet, so when you rip something away, I'm kind of more just like, damn, that sucks, than holy shit, that is horrible. Look at some things that did it really well. Hereditary. Of course, it starts off with tragedy, but the real tragedy strikes a little ways in, once we have an attachment to these characters. Meanwhile, look at something like Demon Slayer. I couldn't care less about the tragedy at the beginning because I don't care about these characters. Like, make me like the characters so that then when they feel awful, I can feel awful with them. But yeah, other than that, I guess the movie wasn't entirely expected because, you know, I was kind of in the belief that they were in purgatory the entire time. Yeah, a little basic of a movie, but it's okay. We got Bad Hair, a bit of social commentary, a bit of an in-look into the music industry and having to change who you are to be big. We've seen it in a couple different ways. This is a pretty unique take on it. I do like the aesthetic, this 80s, 90s vibe, current effects. It's pretty cool. The hair CGI is maybe not the best in the world, but I mean, it's a Hulu movie, you know, the Hulu movies don't get that crazy. An alright movie. I mean, I'm gonna put it in like C tier because it's just nothing outstanding to me. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. In the Earth, a unique slow burn, kind of feels like Annihilation, but leans more into the horror aspect. If you can get past the ridiculously aggressive, bright, flashing lights that go on very constantly in this movie, then I think you'll have a pretty good time. I'm gonna put it in C tier because I had to not watch a big portion of the climax. It's about like these people that go into the woods for like some weird shit to happen, and then instead of like this ritual dark thing that happens, there's this guy that takes care of them until he doesn't, and then you think it's a psycho, but it's actually somebody that has gone insane because of like the spirit that's in the woods. Kind of overdone, but not in like too bad of a way. If it wasn't for like the way too aggressive flashing lights, this movie would probably be like an A tier to a B tier movie because I was pretty enthralled. I was interested, but I had to like look away and put my head under the covers for a handful of the movie just because it was unwatchable. So yeah, In the Earth, it'd be better, but it's C tier because it felt borderline unwatchable to me. If you have a higher tolerance for the ability to watch this movie, it's probably better than the C tier. Simply a graphic error. Enys Men. This was a really cool movie. I was very, very enthralled for a while until the slow burn eventually kind of sputtered out and became nothing. I really like the aesthetic. I really like the color grading. It looks old. It was reminding me of The Wicker Man, just in terms of how it looked, how it felt, the environment, the island. I really liked it. And then it starts to get really weird and kind of like time loopy, but not really in a time loopy sense, more of like you've been on this island alone for so long that it just makes sense to kind of go crazy, kind of like Lighthouse feeling, but like less gritty, less dark. There's a lot of bright colors around. I like the character, the main character. The daughter thing was really creepy, and I still don't even know if the daughter was real or ever real, and I have no clue. Even though I said it does slow down and kind of sputters out, I still really like this movie, just the feel of the movie. It's really ambient. It has a lot of really good things going for it. I'm going to place it in A tier, and honestly pretty high in the A tier, but I don't feel like it deserves S. The movie was kind of like a spiral of insanity that I got to take a joyride in, but like I said, it eventually kind of turned to nothing when the movie didn't progress. Overall, I really like the ambiance. There was a lot of like sounds, like not really sound effects, like sounds, like textures, layers. It climaxed in a few ways and a few different times, but it never really like got me like this is the climax. It kind of felt like there were like 3 half climaxes. It lives inside. This movie's okay. It, I'm sure, has some more cultural meaning if I looked into it more. I did like it, but I didn't love it. It was fine. It's a B tier movie. I mean, just straight up, it's a B tier movie. The characters were not super fleshed out. Like, it kind of felt like the main girl was supposed to be good, and then was kind of not, and then just repeated what the other girl did to a T. I mean, walked up to somebody and was like, hey, you have to believe me. If I tell you something, you'll listen, and you have to believe me. Fine movie. It was very average, middling tier, B tier movie. Oh, also, like, the demon looked kind of corny with like the giant teeth and spikes, and it just felt like maybe it could have been like more vague, more shadowy, and would have really propelled the film a little bit more, but like spelling it out that this is like a scary demon monster with spikes and big teeth, I don't know, just it didn't give me like a genuine monster, good monster feeling. B tier is fair. Crimes of the Future was a little like borderline unwatchable at some times, but not because like it's bad, but because the body horror. There were like these weird, creepy, like alien flesh, spiny chairs and beds and stuff. It just felt like really Cronenberg style, which is good, which is fine. I do like that Brandon Cronenberg has developed a completely different style than David Cronenberg. It'd be pretty boring if they were the exact same style of movies. They, of course, both feature like a body horror, or at least a level of this body horror. I don't know, man. I definitely like the Brandon Cronenberg movies more. It's a little less shocky, maybe a little more cinematic feeling, if that makes sense. But yeah, I did not really like this movie that much. It was kind of like way too body horror. There were a lot of like open surgery scenes, and it was like kind of hard to watch just because like weak stomach, not liking tattooed organs and all that. The movie itself was like kind of deep. It was all about like the inner beauty and all that, but like, yeah, I mean, B tier for me, sir. Maybe even C tier. Maybe I'll put this one in C tier. I think I'm going to put this one in C tier. I felt like the very ending didn't even feel like it was the ending, but maybe that's just me like kind of zoning out and not feeling the movie that much. But yeah, I mean, I'm entitled to my opinion. C tier. We got Infinity Pool, and I'm not even gonna like slow roll this one. I think this is an S tier movie in terms of the neon horror movie catalog. It's a really good movie. I like it a lot. A lot of people don't give Mia Goth enough credit. I think Mia Goth did incredible in this movie. Honestly, she's like one of the biggest reasons this movie is so good in my opinion. This movie is wild, doubling people, using those people to pay for your crimes. It's like a rich people can do this kind of thing, and that's really it. It's a very dystopian. This is something that we cannot have in this world, is like the doubling. This movie obviously takes some inspiration from some other movies on some certain scenes. I was talking about this with my brother just the other day, actually. As soon as our main character goes with these new people, they don their masks, they like go through the town and they go like raiding a house. It felt exactly like that one scene in The Clockwork Orange. If you know, you know. And that's what it is. It's ridiculous. It's very, very dystopian society. Titane. I don't know really how to pronounce his name because it's like French. But yeah, this movie was really weird, but very, very interesting, and like body horror, but like not too over the top to the point where it was like unwatchable. There were a couple scenes where I was like kind of cringe, but like not in a bad way. Well, like kind of in a bad way, but you know what I mean? Like I cringe at some body horror. That means it's doing its job. I feel comfortable, and then I see that scene and I'm like, that was awful, but not in like a bad way, but still in a bad way, kind of. I don't really know what I want. I don't know what I want to say. The whole movie was interesting. The first act was all about like Damn. All right, I'm a one light guy. My green screen looks probably terrible now, but who cares? Anyway, this movie was really interesting. The first part is all about the girl. The second part is all about the dad thinking that his son came back and it's the girl. And then the third scene goes back to being about the girl and her weird metal cyborg baby thing. It's really weird. Such a weird movie. It's subbed in French, so it's like, you know, you have to watch a subbed movie for it, but it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I'm gonna put this in A tier. Doesn't deserve S tier to me, but it definitely, if you say it's an S tier movie in this catalog, yeah, that's fair. It was a really cool movie. This is a movie that I have never even heard of before, and that's a lot of them on here, but this one's subbed, which means that I have to full on pay attention to it. But to my surprise, I liked it a lot, actually. It was pretty good. It was pretty fast-paced, really, really brutal, pretty ridiculous take on like kill the rich. It was brutal. There was like a lot of death and a lot of like really hard to watch like scenes. It was solid. I'm gonna put it at B, but pretty high up in B. Another random new horror movie that has a Euphoria cast member like Cuckoo that we'll talk about later. Sydney Sweeney. She finally plays a role that isn't the exact same. The only things I really know her from is from Euphoria and The White Lotus, where she kind of plays the same role for the most part. I mean, not the exact same, but pretty close. And here she really expands the roles that she plays, because she plays like the good girl nun character, which you've never seen her play before, or at least I've never seen her play before. And she does well, but the movie itself is pretty predictable. I mean, I really feel like this is just a mid movie. I mean, I want to say C tier, but I feel like I just give it D tier. It just didn't do anything new that I've never seen before. It just feels like a really generic movie. Kind of feels like something that would have came out on Hulu and not in the theaters, and it would have if not for Sydney Sweeney, probably. Once you really understand that the movie is its namesake, Immaculate, like Immaculate Conception, you understand what the movie's about, and it doesn't really take off much from there. I feel like the movie itself is pretty predictable and doesn't really do anything too crazy. Like, it's kind of just a mystery, but once they put the things in front of you that let you solve the mystery, it kind of drags. The ending was pretty nuts. Like, the last couple of moments were pretty nuts. They could have showed it, but it's fine that they didn't. One thing that I don't like about the movie is that they don't show the demon baby. Kind of felt like they would have, show the climax type beat, but it's fine. It's a really mid movie though, to be honest. Handling the Undead. This is one that I was really excited to watch, actually, because I saw a lot of really raving reviews. It's an interesting take on, like, what would we do to have our loved ones back. It followed 3 different families, 3 different stories. All 3 were completely different. One of them was about, like, a little boy coming back to life and taking care of him, and what would you do to take care of that little boy. The second one was about, like, the mom, and then the third was, like, an elderly couple. All 3 were very, very bad ending, very, very sad ending, which I like in a horror movie. I don't think horror movies should typically take a happy ending unless it's really deserved. I like the route that they went for the bad ending for this movie. And that's really all I'm going to say. I'm going to put it in B as well. I know B tier is like mid-movie hell, and this is like a little higher, so it's in the B. Maybe we move a bunch of the B's down to C's. I'm not going to change the list now. It is what it is. These are my opinions, so Longlegs. I like Longlegs a lot. This is a really good movie. It's my favorite movie that I watched the entire year. And initially I started making this video in August when Cuckoo came out. But then I put it on the back burner and now it's October 24th, which means I watched a bunch of really good movies that came out in October. Things like Terrifier 3, Smile 2, and The Substance. And Longlegs is still my favorite movie that I watched the entire year. Now, I know it got some mixed reviews. Some people maybe didn't like that they took a paranormal route. I don't blame them because that does kind of turn me off from a lot of other movies. But I think this movie did it really well. I love the route that they took for this movie. I love every bit of this movie, to be honest. I really enjoy Nicolas Cage in this movie. It's really funny for me to say that my favorite movie of the year was Nicolas Cage, and honestly, it's probably a top 5 horror movie for me in general. But I really do love this movie, and it's not just Nicolas Cage, although the Nicolas Cage scenes are all incredible. I mean, every single scene where Nicolas Cage is on the screen, I think is amazing. Micah Monroe did an incredible job as well, definitely making herself one of the best scream queens that we've gotten recently. Things like It Follows and now this movie. The true crime stuff was a little weird the second watch through, you know, the problem solving when I saw this movie the second time. I already knew the whole movie. I was mostly just watching it the second time for like some of the insane Nicolas Cage scenes. I'm putting this movie in S tier. If you haven't seen this movie yet, you gotta give it a watch. It's a great Halloween movie, I think, so get on it. Watch Longlegs. Cuckoo. I wanted so badly to love this movie. I'm a big fan of Hunter Schafer and Euphoria, and I love horror movies, and I just felt like Hunter Schafer in a horror movie is all I needed to watch it. But it turns out that's not just a recipe for success. Not that the movie's bad, but it's not great, which I guess leaves good, but not very good. It gets B. The movie's just a little repetitive, to be honest. A little expected, not super expected, like I didn't predict the whole movie, but I mean a little expected. But unfortunately, I did get exposed to the trailer, and I felt like the trailer did a really bad job at showing the best scenes of the movie. I mean, it feels reminiscent of like the first Smile movie trailer, where it showed like the head dropping from the window scene. You know what I'm talking. I just showed it. I just showed it. You know what I'm saying? But I felt like Cuckoo did that. They showed the best scene, the scariest scene, honestly, in my opinion, of the entire movie, was the first scene where Gretchen was riding her bike and the Cuckoo just ran out and ran after her. But then that was the best scene in the entire movie. And like, I get it, show the good stuff when you're showing your trailer, but don't make it the best part of the movie that you put in the trailer. Now, this is kind of like a little thing. This shouldn't actually take away points from the movie, but it honestly does. You know, that's it. I don't want this video to be way too long, so that's where I'm going to end the video. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'd love it if you comment down below what your favorite Neon movies are. Maybe tier list them yourself, at least for the ones that you've seen. What's your favorite one? What are some other movie production companies that kind of have the same feel as like Neon or A24? Because I'd love to explore some more. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Subscribe, and goodbye.